My goal for Colwood is to create Colwood as a blue zone, first blue zone city in British Columbia. So look that up, and you'll see where
Amazing.
I'm going with this. That's my success.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of What's with RWE. I'm Lester, and this is, of course, a podcast about Canadian healthcare. So today we have a very, very special guest with us. Is actually our first individual who actually shapes policy. So this is the first person we actually talked to that shapes policy and a little bit more. I mean, he maybe he doesn't think so, but I believe he absolutely does. His name is Doug Kobayashi. He is the mayor of Colwood. So welcome on to the podcast, Doug.
Thank you for having me, Lester.
Great, great. Before we jump into this conversation about healthcare, that is the reason why I reached out to you, I'll do a very brief introduction for you, Doug, and then of course, I would love to go into a little bit deeper about your background because it's fascinating. So, so Mayor Doug Kobayashi was elected in 2022. He's been resident of Colwood, which is a city in Vancouver Island, which is the west coast of Canada, since 1970. He spent 20 years in the Royal Canadian Air Force and retired as a lieutenant colonel. He then had a second act. He spent 27 years in the aerospace industry, and he's worked at pretty much all the well-known organizations in Canada that you can pretty much name. And then he has a third act now, where he's now shaping and actually ventured into politics. So again, welcome to the podcast, Doug. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks very much, Lester. Actually, there's a fourth act. This is the fourth act. Between when I retired from the corporate world, I owned a number of small businesses, and I had my family were running them, and then I ended up getting stuck with them, and that's how I became the president of the Chamber of Commerce out here. So yeah.
Oh, okay, that's very interesting. I mean,
Hmm.
I will actually. That's a topic I definitely want to go into. There's so much to talk about. Actually, when I saw your resume, I immediately thought of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't know if you've seen the Netflix miniseries about Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's in three parts, and it talks about each sort of act in his career, which is bodybuilder, then movie star, then politician. So it reminded me of that sort of trajectory.
Oh, that's funny. No, I haven't seen it, but yeah, I've had yeah. This is Act Four number, so it's yeah, having a lot of fun though.
Excellent, excellent. So, to give everyone a little bit of background, the reason why I reached out to Doug, and he was very generous, obviously very generous with his time to have this conversation, is I saw an article that was actually a couple of articles on CBC, several news outlets in Canada, and the headline really caught my attention. It said, BC mayor gets call from across Canada about crazy plan to recruit doctors. So, with that being the little bit of the backdrop, maybe you can explain to the audience here, just to I mean, assuming there's actually audiences from across the world and in the U.S., not necessarily all Canadians. Maybe you can help people understand a little bit about what was this crazy plan? Why was it so crazy, and what was the problem you were looking to solve?
Okay, sure. I'll give you some context how this all started. This all started probably in about 2017. I wasn't even a politician at that time. And what happened to me, I personally did not have a family doctor. I was like many, just over 50% of the people that reside here in BC. What a frustration! I couldn't get a family doctor, and I had to use a walk-in clinic all the time. So the only time, of course, being, I was a very healthy man. Triathlete for God's sake. I did one in my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, my 50s, and I decided I was going to do one last one in my 60s. So I'm a lot older than I look, but so I was actually training with my daughter, to tell you the truth, who's very athletic, And and I wasn't, that earlier in the year I had developed pneumonia. I've never had pneumonia before, and it's where you have to sleep sitting up basically because you feel like you can't breathe. So I did get over that. So about 6 months later, I had the same symptoms, and I thought, oh my God, I've got pneumonia again. And it was a cardiac nurse that ran into me one time, and she was a friend, and she looked at me and said, "You got to get to the hospital. Stat. You're gray, and you don't look good." So I ended up going over to emergency, and sure enough, what happened is I had congestive heart failure. Yeah. So interesting. So so the adventure is in the end I ended up getting the defibrillator in my body, uh and then after they treat me for that, then they tell me that I'm a diabetic. So they fix the heart problem first, and then we tackle the diabetes. So the interesting thing that the doc said to me, he said, and I looked at how many operations. I went through 3 operations, and then I got treated for my diabetes. But here's the bottom line: the doctor said to me, Doug, this was all preventable. If you should have, you should have been starting to see doctors, and we this would have been all diagnosed if you had a proper family doctor. This walk-in clinic stuff just doesn't work. So I was actually, I the only reason I have a family doctor today is because I had to have heart failure first, right?
Oh, no, my
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah. So that's what really got me motivated. And I started talking to my family physician a lot, and I said, this isn't right. I says I wanted a family physician. I've been on a waiting list, and I don't have one. And when they finally called me, I had to drive, an hour up the road to see a doctor, to get a family doctor. And I said, that's just not acceptable. And so, I said, and at that time, I became a counselor, city councilor here in Colwood. And I said, you know what? This is something we got to fix. We've got to fix this. And of course, the bottom line with the city, they said, you know what? That's a provincial responsibility. We don't get involved in that. And that didn't make sense to me. This is everybody's problem, every level of government, I think, anyways. This is my own bottom line on this. I says, the feds provide the money, the province sets the policies. They're not the implementers. They can't implement anything. I'm not being critical. That they're doing what they should be doing. They're very poor at implementation. So then of course, after being turned down by my council, they're saying we don't want to do this. I thought to myself, one day, I may run for mayor, and I'm going to make this our responsibility. So and the funny thing is, back in 2021, I decided that maybe this municipal government isn't for me. I've got lots of things to do. I'm a former governor at the university. I was on the board of governors with Railroads University. I was on the board of directors for the Aviation Museum. I was on the board of governors for the Conservatory of Music. I had lots of things to do, so this it didn't phase me. And early in 2022, a lot of people convinced me to run for mayor, and I hummed and hawed and considered it for about a month, and then I made the choice to do it. So this all started. So the way that when I ran for mayor, I did it in an interesting way. I divided our city up into 8 areas. There are 8 distinct areas, and then I surveyed 100 people in each of the areas. So that's 800 people. So that's a good sampling for a population of 23,000 people. And I said, what's the most important things to you? Well, the one recurring item was family doctors. Interesting, right? So, my whole platform was based on what I heard. I did a very systematic way of doing it because I'm an engineer by background. I'm a professional engineer. So you never get data in front of an engineer, right? So, I analyzed it and I came up with a platform. And I said I'm committed to doing. There's 7 areas that I said I am going to tackle, and there's way more, but I said this is where I think the priorities are. and one of them happened to be healthcare, getting family doctors. And everyone thought, well, he probably accomplished these other six, but family doctors, oh, that's not going to happen. Well, as soon as I got elected by a landslide, I did take a 70% of the vote here in Colwood. And so when I decided to look at this problem, it just was interesting. I heard some doctors that were going around uh, with their ideas on how they think we could fix it. So I decided to go grassroots. So my office here was full of doctors all the time. And of course, I was working with my own family physician. How can we fix this? How can we do this? And so, what started as a recruitment strategy turned out to be let's propose a different model. Let's do something, but let's be legal about this because I'm a municipal employee. I are not employee, but I'm the mayor, and I've got to follow the community charter and the municipal act. I can't get around that. So I thought to myself, what can I do? How can I stay within this? How do I make sure I follow the Canadian Health Act? Don't want anyone accusing me of tinkering where I shouldn't be tinkering. So, a lot of the credit for the ideas came from the doctors, particularly a core of these doctors. And they were so critical in my thinking. And then they brought other doctors in so I could listen to them. So the whole idea was, why don't the biggest frustration, what they told me at the time was, doctors go to school for 7 8 years, and they come out and they want to practice medicine. And a lot of them, if they go into the family physician, if they become a family physician, a lot of them end up being business people because they're opening clinics, they're running their the business side of it, the administration, and they're spending so much time with those overhead functions that it's not attracting the new generation millennial type doctors. Big frustration. So how do we get them back to being doctors? So the problem that I was trying to solve, my problem went from not only recruiting doctors for our city, because we had none, we had zero, 23,000 people, no doctors, because we just lost a family clinic, which was a private clinic, and they just said doesn't make sense. They couldn't keep doctors, they couldn't afford the overhead, so they closed down the clinic. So basically, I looked at the problem as two things. First of all, recruitment. How do we attract them? The second one was, how do we retain them? That's the problem with most models out there. There's all this, people are trying to attract them and they do fancy dancy things to attract them, but they can't retain them. Doctors are can be very mobile, especially family doctors. They go locum to find out which clinic gives them the best deal. So that's when the whole idea was generated. Why don't we as a city provide this as a service? Why don't we make them employees? Why don't we give them pensions? Well, novel idea. Retention, right? Why don't we give them benefits? Novel idea. And does this all make sense? So let's do a business plan. Let's do a high level business plan. And we looked at it and we said, holy mackerel, we can do this. Okay, so let's go find out legally if we can do this. Are we stepping out of bounds right now? And Lester, that was the longest period because the lawyers didn't know how to handle this because it was groundbreaking. No one's done this before, and they couldn't. They didn't have immediate answers for us. And so we just motored along. I presented to council what plans were. I got a high level, unanimous agreement with the city council here to let's proceed. Let's explore this even further. So we came up, and I'm one that I believe in a methodology. I don't like reinventing the wheel. So there was a very successful counselor up in the Comox Valley. You probably maybe saw this news article from about 2 or 3 years ago. And he successfully recruited 41 doctors for the Comox Valley. And I asked him, how did you do this? And then he explained how he did it. And it wasn't publishing, ads in newspapers. It wasn't doing any of that stuff. He just basically made videos which sold a lifestyle, and phenomenal. I mean, you think about it, it's genius. It's simple but genius. So I decided I'm just going to copy him. I copied what he did. In fact, we produce videos now that are his videos on steroids. That they're outstanding. People want to move here just look watching the videos. So we had that side of it. So again, we worked on this model, and this model basically is it works with the what they call the longitudinal family payment plan. It's their model. They allow it. The province said you can go ahead and do this. So basically, what happens is the doctors assign their payments to the city. So whatever the patients they see, they use the MOAs, which belong to the city, the medical office assistants, and we do the billing to the government, and then we pay them a salary in return, with a pension and any medical benefits with it. Now, is this model for everybody? Absolutely not. It is for some of those. Like, we heard the frustrations. I heard this one doctor, in fact, a local doctor who owned a business all his life. He had a clinic, and he went to sell it, and he couldn't sell it. No one wanted it. He couldn't give it away, and so that was his retirement fund. So, what we're offering here is that, you come work for us and we'll look after all the administrations. Because if you think about it, a city is really well established. We can do payroll. We got HR services. We'll hire the MOAs. We'll look after, labor issues. Doctors don't want to deal with that. So we just want you to come here and be a doctor for 8 hours a day. You're just looking after healthcare. They have no more. They don't have to worry every night about, how they're going to pay their overhead, how they're going to pay their rent. They don't have to worry about hiring accountants to do their accounting for their business at the end of the year. They have none of those worries now. We've taken it all the way. They're simply an employee. And so, this is how this spawned, and we refined the model, and we got it working. And as you probably seen, we hired our first doctor back mid-December. We have our second doctor now. We just hired, and we got a third one that is very close to the near the bottom of the funnel now, that we're just waiting for them to sign on. Lots of interest. In fact, we did something that was very innovative. There was a family physician conference that was held in Vancouver back in November. And before we even had anything finalized and got approvals, we pitched our Colwood tent, and we recruited there. And we had 115 doctors that signed up with an expression of interest. Uh, so, like I said, it's not going to be for every doctor, because under the clinics that they have, the community health clinics and things like that, they can make a lot more money, of course, right? Because they're billing out, and they could probably see a lot more patients. But we're not asking that. We're asking for real community health here, and we are not driving those same numbers that they're driving right now. So this is a lifestyle balance. We're saying, hey, we just want you to work your 8 hours, and that's all we want, and we want you to see this many patients in an hour, and that's it. Because we want that care within our community. Some other things that we have, and we just sort of says, do you buy in? Maybe once every couple months, 3 months, that you go visit seniors at their homes within Colwood. Yeah, absolutely. So it's bringing that old-fashioned doctoring back into this. So it's a different model, as I said here, but and like I said, it's going to attract some, and others it may not attract. So some lessons learned right now so far, that maybe there's other ways that we can do this. There's other clever ways that we're thinking about right now, to get the newer, younger doctors now just graduating. We're looking at maybe potential solutions of maybe paying off their student loans, because that's a big issue, right? And then they could pay us back at no interest, and over whatever number of years, just so that we can retain them. That's another way. but I guess we looked at this in a wholesome way too. So not only did we do we have pensions and benefits for these doctors, we also work with all our developers because we're building 300 to 400 new homes a year right now. We're growing so fast. Our population is growing at a rate of 600 to 800 people a year. So per capita, we're I think the second fastest growing city within Greater Victoria. And so what we've done with the developers, they've offered massive discounts for doctors that will work at the clinic here. So that's another area that we're helping them with, right? So, and so we've got two major developers that have signed up to our program. And on top of that, we've also worked with the daycare centers. So we got spots reserved for for our doctors if they have kids. And then now the latest is some businesses are saying, we want to provide them more incentive. We can maybe give them discounts. If you issue them a card and they're from our clinic, and so our plan is to hire 8 doctors at this particular clinic. That's what we're limited to because of the size. Our bigger plan is we want to build a 15,000 square foot facility and have all the surrounding allied healthcare professionals in the same building, including having X-ray place, having uh, blood work. Having you can get your blood work done here. Again, we have to all drive away from here, and just from a greenhouse gas perspective too. There's some environmental advantages too. So, but lots of things that are happening, lots of new ideas, very progressive in our thinking right now, and it is. I mean, people thought I was, that word was. I didn't use that word. People thought I was crazy, and I think some people just thought I was too crazy. That they. I think some of them thought you're going to fail. But so far it's been successful. But learning lots right now. We've learned so many lessons right now, and personally, right now I've been inundated with calls. People are really curious about this right now from different municipalities. In fact, I'm booked for about 3 or 4 engagements now for major shows right now to talk about what we've done. So very innovative. And that's what I think I bring to this job right now. I'm not your typical politician. I'm an entrepreneur, and we try to think outside the box. And this is the new way that our city is moving forward. And in fact, I just hired a new chief administration officer, city manager, and his biggest his why he wanted this job so much is because of how progressive and how entrepreneurial we are here, and he just loves everything that we're doing. So this is just not the only thing we're doing, that's for sure. We're doing some pretty innovative things. In fact, I was just bragging to someone the other day ago. We have this group here called the Grumpy Taxpayers, right, in Victoria, and they look at watch governance all over the place, and they have this award every year. It's called the Candy Cane Award, which is awarded for efficient, entrepreneurial, effective government, and we've won it 2 years.
Wow. That's probably the most important award you've won,
Oh
right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
far.
yeah. So
Very impressive.
that's interesting. So, but in fact, I've been invited to the BC Economic Summit in the Okanagan in the summer, and they said, "Hey, listen, we don't normally have someone come and do these types of talks here, but this is so this is so interesting what you did. Could you do a presentation?" Yeah, sure, I can do that. But if this is going to help all the communities, like I've told people right now, don't jump into this right now until you do your own homework. But we
Mhm.
can help you. I've offered my help. I don't want to do it for every city. I'm trying to get disciples out there to spread this. And like I said, you may have this clinic and you may have a private clinic sitting beside it. It's two different models, but the bottom line is, we're going to look after our family physicians. We're hiring 8, which is 10,000 more people that will have a doctor. And so per capita will have the highest percentage of citizens attached to a family doctor than any other city here in British Columbia. So something we're
That's
proud of.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You and your team should be very proud of that. And
Boy.
just for a little bit of context for maybe others, is just I guess the part that people would consider crazy is that it's more so that it's just not the normal way that a practice is run. By and large, family physicians are
Yeah.
almost like their own business owner. They're like a small business, right?
Yep.
In some ways, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So that's
So,
that's go
that
ahead.
and the fact that this is something that's not normally done by a city, right?
Yes,
But
absolutely.
we look at it this way right now. It's just another service that we're here to serve our community, right? This is a major impact, as it's been published that when we had a survey that was done here in Colwood, like an official independent survey, and the results weren't surprising. They're the same as what I found in my survey of 800, was that the number one priority for the citizens in the city was, surprisingly, wasn't economic. It was, I need a family doctor. It was family physician. So number one priority. And got a lot of good press for it. And you know what? I can walk anywhere in this city and people are just patting me on the back because this is a real thing. It's substantive. As I told people before, running a city isn't that difficult, right? I mean, you take a lot of criticisms, you can, and people tend to criticize. I was one of them. I used to criticize local government a lot. But from an impact point of view, these type of things that we're doing right now, and I've got other projects ongoing right now, are so impactful, and they're just changing the norm right now. We're changing the norm here. Because I told anyone can be a municipal politician. Anyone can sit there and pass bylaws. Anyone can do land planning, criticisms and all that. But anyone can do it. Anyone can run. But doing these special projects like this is pretty darn special. Like you're making a major impact to your community. So that's what I love. That's what keeps me driven right now.
Absolutely, it's absolutely amazing, and maybe if we can go back in time a little bit just to understand a little bit about your history, because you mentioned that you took a very engineering approach to solving this issue, really, which is really to understand the underlying problems and then
Yep.
kind of figuring out solutions that were pragmatic enough to kind of solve it. And maybe we can kind of walk through, if you could share maybe a little bit of your story as from wherever you would like to start. If you want to start from your time in the Air Force and
Sure.
then
Sure.
your engineering career, like how do you think that shaped the way that you both govern the city and then also maybe also your life in general, that entire background that you have?
Yeah. Okay. So, interesting story. I am a bit unusual because I started off in the military college system. And back in those days, in the early 70s, not too many people that went to military college that looked like me. Let me put it that way. It was a very Caucasian type of institution, right? And I excelled. I wasn't great at the military side in the first year because I had no background. I wasn't a cadet or anything like that. Academically and athletically, I had that side of it, but maybe not so much the military side. As I tell people in all, and this is a true story. My very first day, and then they go attention, and I hear everybody go bang, and I sort of slide my feet together, and I tell people, within 2 minutes I passed out. I didn't know how to stand to attention. But so I did come from a military college system. Graduated from Royal Military College in Kingston, mechanical engineer, first class honors. I got a scholarship. I did my master's in England in aeronautical engineering. So I'm aerospace engineering. I won the prestigious British aerospace thesis prize. Actually, I won the prize for both my research thesis and my design thesis. So, like I said, academics was pretty easy to me, but I was very pragmatic engineer. And then I had to serve time in the military because I owed time when I went to Royal Military College. But I was very successful even in the Air Force. I got promoted in minimum time right through the ranks, lieutenant right up to lieutenant colonel. I was 32 years old as a lieutenant colonel, unheard of. And I decided that at that point in time that because I was an engineer, I could never make the top of the military, the chief of defense staff. You have to be an infantry guy or a pilot or a ship driver, as I call them. That's the way it is, and or an artillery guy. An aerospace engineer would never be chief of defense staff. But it's interesting because even when I went to staff college in Toronto, that's where all the senior guys go, and then you're going to be promoted to general ranks. I went there, and I was the engineer, and yet I was the top of my class there also. So, but I decided I had a great offer to go to a civilian company, an aerospace company, and they hired me on as the manager of engineering. And within 3 months, I was the director. Within 8 months, I was the vice president. And a year later, they actually sent me off to MBA, an executive MBA school, and said, "We want you to be the president now." But then I got headhunted away by another aerospace company, and then I did really well at that aerospace company, and then I got I got headhunted to the United States, where I was the CEO of a very large aerospace company, a second largest private aerospace company in the U.S. And then after I was finished with my contract there, I came back to Canada, and I was the vice president and general manager of Spar Aerospace. So here in Canada, I did really well with them. L3 acquired us; they kept me on, and I became a corporate VP of L3 Canada, and I did so well, and our stocks kept on splitting all the time. I was able to retire when I was 49 years old. It's almost 20 years
Wow.
ago. 20 years ago, believe it or not. And so I did sort of retire for about 8 months, and but that wasn't me, and I ended up owning my own consulting company. And what I specifically did is I did strategic planning, and more importantly was I did performance metrics. You can't improve anything unless you can measure it. So that was extremely successful, too successful. In fact, my company grew so fast that I couldn't. It grew way too fast. And the big problem is that every time we went to see, these various companies for the contracts, uh, they didn't want any of my partners involved in it. I had to be personally involved in it. So, and I just went, this is nuts. I'm working more, harder now than I ever worked in a corporation. So I was successful in it. I kept it, I maintained it, and then I sort of retired a second time. And then and the only reason I did that is because my daughter moved over here to Victoria, and she wanted mom and dad to move there because I was living in Kelowna. That's where I retired. And so I did come back to Victoria. I am actually from here. And so I came back, and I ended up buying three small, franchises basically. And the third one wasn't actually a franchise; it was a something that we started up at, and my son-in-law was running it all. And unfortunately, my daughter and my son-in-law decided to go back to the oil patch because my daughter's an engineer also, and they went back to Shell, and so I got stuck running them all, which is interesting because I lived the life of the corporate, and you had your own HR, your own payroll, you had all that, right? But when you're a small business owner, you're it, you're everything. And I just knew enough to have that hands-on experience, but we were extremely successful, believe it or not. And thank God we sold it all off before COVID, because I said, I'm not. This is not what I want to do. I was having too much fun volunteering in the committee. I've been on everything, you name it. I even ran the junior football team here. I was the president of the West Shore Rebels, 2016. I was. That's the very first year that we went to the national championships.
Wow.
Yeah. And the funny story behind that one is people says, how did you turn around that team? We went from last to first in 1 year. And I says, it's pretty simple. I don't have a secret formula. I split the organization up. I says, you know what? I'm not a football guy. I can't coach football, but I'm good at the business side. So I split the team up, the organization, into a business element and into the football operations. And I had a person for each. And then what I did for the business side, I hired, made sure we hired some really good coaches and good staff, good recruiting of players. And on the business side, I said I did the same question. I says, "What's the best team in BC?" Well, it's the Okanagan Sun out of Kelowna. Huh. So I called the president up, and I kept, he laughs about this too. I kept on calling him. I was calling him every day. Well, what about this? What about this? How do you do this? And then I went out and saw him. And then he says, Doug, here, this is how you do it. This is the how-to. And he says, if you're successful, the league is successful. So these are young men that get recruited right into the CFL, right? So you either go the university route or the
Mm-hmm.
junior football route. And so, I just took that, and we organized ourselves. We used those guidelines, and the ironic thing is, when it came to the BC championships, guess who we met? The Okanagan Sun, and we beat them.
Yes, yes. Way to go. Way to
so,
go.
so no, that's I've been very fortunate. I'm really noted here because of how I turned around the Chamber of Commerce. I took it from a red operation into a black operation. So we went from, it's very successful, and it's thriving today. So, I've been involved in so many things here, and like I said, I love my job. But when I was a governor, I was a lieutenant governor appointment to the university, actually. So, so I've had my hands in so many things, been on so many boards here that, it's incredible. So that's all this stuff, I guess. What the military did for me in a nutshell. It helped me make sure I was disciplined and organized and planned very well. My civilian career taught me something. I worked for some of the very best CEOs, and they told me about strategy. Taught me a lot about strategy. And you know what? This is a mistake made by 99% of the companies out there, right? Strategy, they figure, is what we're going to do. But you know what strategy really is? You got to think of it differently. Strategy is deciding what you're not going to do, okay? And focusing. And that's the big difference here when I came to the city, when you looked at the strategic priorities, like it was pages, a binder full of them. Well, to my dismay, we did reduce it down to 89, but now this year we're actually going to try to reduce it down to 5 or 6. And it's called, it's Sun Tzu, The Art of War, and that is concentration of force. So if you resource things properly, you put the right funding to it, you concentrate on it, you will succeed. And that I learned that from my commercial life. So, and I applied it in my small businesses too. So
That's amazing.
yeah, so it's a story that I tell over and over, and I tell people this right now. And I'm also a director with the Capital Regional District also. So that again is like their strategy is gigantic. It's just nuts. And we wonder why our spending runs away from us. It's because we try to be everything to everybody. No, 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 no. It's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then we accomplish nothing. And people get frustrated. Taxpayers go, "Where's my value?" Right? So, yeah.
Yes, that's amazing. It's it's great that you're taking elements from different parts of. I mean, I mean, being in the service, that's of course somewhat different than the corporate life as well. So just taking elements of a little bit here and there, absolutely, I can see how that shaped kind of at least your capabilities now to be able to achieve what you have been able to achieve with at Colwood. I'm curious. The two things I kind of noticed was one, obviously, you have a high degree of perseverance, given when you first entered the military college, when that was not necessarily the norm for people like yourself, or like like us, right? But there's that component, and then there's a component of like very very high achiever. I mean, that's obviously very very true from your history. So I'm wondering, when you embarked on this journey to kind of reshape at least a little bit of family medicine in Colwood, because there was obviously a risk involved in it, right? Because
Mm,
no one seems like no one's done it before, not
right.
just in Colwood, but maybe in the rest of Canada, people saw it as crazy. Like, was there an element of like fear of failure? Because like, oh, this could really fail. I'm assuming a ton of people said to you, well, this could really fail, Doug. It could make like really, really taint your reputation in the community. Like, was did that ever cross your mind?
Yes, but then like it's how I do everything. You identify all the risks, and then you create your own risk mitigation plan right now. So you minimize it. So you know what? The business model itself is pretty simple. I mean, you're going to always have customers, right? You will. I mean, it's not that revenue source is always there. It's a nice thing. So I don't think there's the problems aren't going to be from a revenue point of view. There won't be losses. The risk right now is that we did spend taxpayers' dollars, which we're going to pay back right now, just establishing the clinic. We had to pay for certain things, right? We don't actually own the building. It's owned by Jimmy Pattison, and they've been a great partner. So that's another element too. I did do a partnership with the private sector, and so we risk, if it fails, which how can it? You think about it, you say, well, if no one shows up to their go to a doctor, well, no, you're going to always have patients. I mean, there's no problems any one of these clinics getting patients. You don't hear, geez, we don't have enough patients here today. It's way too many. That's the issue. So just purely from that point of view, that if it were somehow, maybe there was this big labor strife thing that might happen. That may happen. Doctors might all get angry one day and just walk out. That's possible. So that's a risk. So you have to look at it from a risk point of view, risk mitigation. Yeah, there was some risk involved. Because like I said, the other cost that we had to pay was all these legal fees just to learn, make sure that we were doing what the things that we said we were going to do. We could do it legally. Like, we spent a lot of money doing that. So yeah, I mean, if this was to shut down tomorrow, yeah, everything that we spent, is at risk. But I don't see how it's not going to be successful. We're already getting lineups for the clinic right now as we speak. Because we just don't have enough doctors. We still got to bring in another 6 doctors, right? So I don't think it's an issue. So yeah, it was a bit nerve wracking. And you know what? Yes, I do realize that. Did it make me nervous? Not really, because I knew that I'm doing the right thing. I just think of how much money is wasted by government right now on they set up all these policies and plans, and they don't implement very well. And you know what? To be fair, with the provincial government, they're not staffed with implementers, right? They they're the ones that set up the policies, and they've actually. I'll give credit to the province. They set up a policy that enabled me to do this. It's just that everyone missed the boat on it, right? They just sort of, I've had other mayors that go, Jesus, we thought of something like this 6 years ago. What changed? I says, the longitudinal family payment plan. Oh, shoot. Never thought of that, right? And so, but I'm a creative kind of guy, And and I don't take credit for coming up with all the ideas. I just harnessed everybody right in a room, and I was telling people it was sort of late on a Friday evening. We were sitting in my office, and the mayor's office is still on, and we were kind of getting giddy about it, actually. Maybe this is what we could do. Maybe this is what we could do. But some of the greatest ideas come from that, right? So it was more or less a brainstorm. No one really had a hardcore agenda. No one knew what it was going to look like in the end at that point in time. And we just started putting the pieces together. It was a great team. The staff here, this is the very first time where I can say the council and the staff were so well connected on something. They just, wow, they wanted to make it happen, and to have the public was behind us. Oh my God, I've never seen anything like this. And then the doctors, and it's funny because my wife can go anywhere in this town to go see a doctor, any specialist, and they all know my name.
Of
Yeah,
course.
yeah. So, but
Great.
but it's like I don't want to take all the credit for this. This was a team. It was awesome team, and I just had the pleasure of leading this. And I stand by everything that I've done. Learn, like I said. I mean, there's just some things that I could have did differently to get where we are today. Oh yeah, geez, the people that follow me will now have the benefit of not making the same mistakes that we did. So yeah, that's the key.
Absolutely. So I guess what I'm hearing, what I'm learning from your kind of this how you guys overcame this challenge is in some ways just because you're the first to do something like this was perceived as say a risk, but you really dug into almost like the fundamentals. Like, okay, are we going to be able to pay everyone? Is this legally
Yeah,
something that we can
yeah,
do, right? And you broke into almost like bite-sized components are actually you can tackle each one.
yep,
And then on top of that, obviously you reached out to a fantastic team. You brought in both the people that are working in municipality, and of course also worked with the industry as well. So you brought together a team to also come together. So at least that's what I'm hearing, and
yep,
that's why I'm
yep.
taking away from this.
Yep, absolutely. And today now, I mean, now that we're into this, it's not only other cities, it's every medical facility that you can think of right now. A lot of the private medical facilities, um, they're calling us and they want to partner with us. Like, how do we partner? How do we do this? And actually, in actual fact, they're bringing some ideas into me right now because one of the things that I wanted to have is I'm a metrics guy, and I'm going to be the first city in southern Vancouver Island to have a whole performance measurement system. I'm
Wow.
doing this right now. So I'm strong on this whole on the medical facility. So I'm saying, what are the metrics I should be looking at? How do I measure success right now? It's just not, geez, I got 8 doctors, therefore 10,000 people. That's just a basic. No, what metrics do I know to know that this is really working? Is there some way that I can look at cost savings as far as, how much I'm saving hospitals right now? For example, I'm the prime example. 3 heart operations, right? And I shouldn't have had any. Shouldn't have had any. And that's the thing that angers me if I had a family doctor. And I think of, all the treatments I had to treat my diabetes. Now I was a borderline type 1, type 2, right? And I beat it. I beat it now, and I'm not costing the system anything. No one's. I don't have to buy prescription drugs, and I'm a less burden to the whole health system. But that's the key to health, having health care and proper family physicians. We can prevent a lot of this. It's preventable, you know. And the other example I give is just a recent example from another side of my family. My wife, thank God, she had a family doctor and the reason she got one is because the one that took me on, I asked him and pleaded with him to take her on, and he did. And if it wasn't for him, my wife wouldn't her breast cancer wouldn't have been detected because she's the type the same as me. Whenever she got really really sick, once every 10 years, she might walk into a walk-in clinic. Well, she would have been just motoring along, assuming nothing, and it was because of having a family physician and a mandatory annual checkup detected, dealt with.
Amazing.
You know what I mean? So this is why I'm even more resolved in making sure that this works, and we can make this better. Like I said, I'm thinking of other models. Really, how do we make this model work even better? Is there a way that we can attract even younger doctors? Because right now we're getting the most of the doctors we're getting are in the range of between 35 and 42 years old right now. But I'd love to get some, people that are fresh out of school. But to them, it's not so much because they can't think of pensions and benefits, right? They don't think that they're looking at their immediate requirement, and they're all walking out with at least $300,000 in debt, right? So maybe there's a better way because we can borrow money cheaper, right, as a city. So can we do this and loan it back to them? Give them a no interest payment, and say if they make so many years and they stay with us, maybe we can make the rest of it a grant sort of thing. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, but we can think outside the box for a solution.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I guess there's one thing that's probably a little bit esoteric, but you mentioned a couple of times. I do want to dig into it just a bit. You
Hmm.
mentioned that the the province changed the payment structure for doctors from, I think it was called a fee for service, to something called longitudinal family physician payment model. I
Yep.
looked it up and I tried to figure out what was the, like, what was, maybe if you can explain what the
Oh.
difference between the two are and why it allowed you to do something in it so innovative.
So what it basically allows us to do is do what we're doing right now is shadow bill. And before, like it fee for payment right now still exists. That's what other people in the other clinics work on right now. And really, the goal there is if you're money motivated, like some doctors may be, is you try to chug out as many customers or clients a day. And if you find out your family physician's making $1 million a year, then you don't have the right family physician. Let me put it that way. So what this longitudinal family medicine plan does is basically it's been restructured now so that this is one great thing that the province has done is they're paying them much better now. It's not as high as Alberta's, but it's very competitive with other provinces now. At one time, we were probably pretty low for in the 10 provinces, but it also allows this whole thing of what I call I don't know if it's the right word, but shadow billing, where we can bill. The doctors would give us all their times, and we would bill. And the MOAs would give us the data, and then we would bill the government, and then the government would pay us back, and then we pay the salary. That's what it allows you to do.
Got it. Got it. It's actually, it's funny enough. It's something as simple as the billing component. Like, who
Yeah,
can bill was what allowed
yeah,
you to do
yeah,
something so innovative.
yeah.
Because I really enjoy having conversations with individuals like you who kind of take a very incredibly pragmatic approach, something that can be done. Because right now, as you can imagine, everyone talks about AI and AI is going to solve everything. It seems like, but right, you know what I mean. But here, you actually did something. Oh,
Yeah,
we can build now. Oh, let's
yeah,
just set this up, right? Of course, I'm being a little bit simplistic here.
yeah,
Obviously, there was much more work that went into it, but this is, I think, is absolutely fantastic. The one thing I'm curious about, and you can tell me, hey, you know what, I'd rather not have that conversation, but I'm going to ask it a little bit anyway. So, the new doctor that came over from London, Ontario, did
hmm
you ever get like a call from the mayor of London that said, "Hey, what's the deal, Mayor Doug? Like, you're taking our doctors." Like,
No,
has that conversation come up?
no, it hasn't. And she actually worked for the for Western Ontario, the University of Western Ontario, with the family practice. And no, she gave her reasons. It's not up to me to decide. So, there's one thing that we basically are committed to do, Lester, and I haven't guaranteed this, but I said, you probably don't see the recruitment videos in this province because we're not trying to recruit in this province because we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Does that make sense to me? No. But you know what? I think the rest of the provinces across Canada are fair game. We've lost a lot to Alberta. I'm just trying to steal some back, and one of our doctors is from Alberta. Although they even pay more there, but it's lifestyle. Again, it's doing that work balance lifestyle, and would you rather live in Edmonton or Calgary or here in Victoria? It's pretty easy. I'd love to live in Vancouver, but I just can't afford where you live right now.
Oh my goodness. That's the next thing you need to tackle. Oh, that's fantastic, Doug. And I don't want to take up too much more of your time because you've been incredibly generous with it, and this has been incredible, fascinating conversation, and especially your story to leading you to becoming mayor. And it seems very serendipitous that you've become mayor at this time, and we have a ginormous family doctor problem across Canada, and of course in your hometown or your city of Colwood, and you've been able to actually do something, and it seems, at least the early signs are that it's been quite a success. At least that's what I've been seeing from all the news articles. So that's
Yep.
fantastic. I'm curious, maybe we'll end off with, if in, let's say, 5 years time or whatever duration you want to use, like how would you measure success? Because you talked about metrics as a key component of how you think about almost any project, at least approaching any type of project. Like how would you measure success? What are some ideas that you floated around with you and your team in 2, 3, 5 years time? You said, hey, you know what,
Okay.
this worked.
That's good. That's a great question, and it's an excellent question actually. Success to me right now at this early stage is measurable because it is our ultimate goal is that every we can guarantee anyone that moves to our city, you will be guaranteed a family doctor. Okay, that's a big success. Second one is the metric that we're trying to use right now is, and this is with the help of a partner right now, because they said, hey, we know the metric and we can help you set this up. In exchange, we want this from you. I'll go, okay. So the second measure of success is what we're saving the healthcare system right now. And they have they've come up with a fairly simple metric to do this right now. There's an algorithm that they've developed over the years, and I liked it. They basically high level told me how they do this, and I went, wow. So you could show the success of doing something different right now. I think just overall quality of life, the surveys that we do right now, we do them every 2 years. That's another going to be a form of success for me. But the bigger measure, and it probably won't happen. I don't know when I'm going to retire, if I'm going to rerun or what right now. But my biggest thing is it's even a bigger picture. It's that total care, right? It's just not about family doctors. It's having that total care, that quality of life. So look up this term. My goal for Colwood is to create Colwood as a blue zone, first blue zone city in British Columbia. So look that up, and you'll see where
Amazing.
I'm going with this. That's my success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's amazing. Thank you very much, Mayor Doug Kobayashi, for joining us today on What's with RWE. Actually, where can people find you? Because I'm just looking at a couple of places. It seems like you have both an Instagram at Doug in Colwood, so DOUG.
Yeah.
IN Colwood, spelled COLWOOD. You seem to have an X account as well, or formerly
I don't
Twitter.
use them. I don't use
Okay,
X. I've dumped that and I refuse to use it for. You figure it out yourself.
of
I
course.
refuse to use it. So the best way is if you go to our Colwood website. I have a direct email. I generally take them through there because I have an executive assistant that makes sure that she looks at them. I don't generally give out my personal email, but not. It depends on the relationships, right? So, but that's the best one is dkobayashi at colwood.ca is my email.
Perfect, perfect. So again, that's D K O
Kobayashi.
Kobayashi at Colwood, spelled COLWOOD.ca.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Doug. This has been an
Okay.
amazing conversation and very, very much appreciate. And I hope to see like Colwood Blue Zone.
Thanks a lot.
More with it.
Okay. Talk to you later, Lester.
Yes, thanks again. And if you love this conversation, please subscribe, like, thumbs up this episode. And of course, if you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave them down below. Thanks again, everyone, and thank you very much, Doug.